And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at Naruto Shippuden, the board game. Now, I have to start out by admitting that I had never even heard of this cartoon until doing this review. I have looked it up, and obviously it's a very popular anime that's been out for quite a bit and many episodes for it. And so I'm going to be going into this not knowing the different characters, so forgive me if I don't know that this character is amazingly cool and awesome. In interest of fairness, I did play with at least one person who has watched the series and one person who was a fan of the series, so I got their feedback on that. And I'll tell you, the person who was a fan of the series did enjoy the different characters and knew who they all were. I was just calling them Porcupine Face and different things, but they were correcting me on who the different characters were. This is a cooperative game in which players are trying to stop this really weird bad guy here, a couple weird bad guys. They really look nasty and mean, and your job is to stop them and beat them as a team. Let's take a look. Each player is going to take one of the characters in the game. There are 6 characters in the game. We have Rock Lee and Naruto and Sakura, and they have different stats on their cards. They have an attack power, which is 3 for everybody, except for Sakura has a 4. Then we have a chakra ability, which is either 3 or 4 for each character, and then a technique ability, which is essentially how many cards you can have in your hand. Each player also has an experience track at the bottom of the board that once you get to different spots will increase maybe your stats. For example, Rock Lee, when he gets all the way over, will get a +1 to his attack. And then you also get to flip him over, which will, basically there's his +1 to attack. Add it to the thing. You could even start with these on the other side if you want to play an easier version of the game. It's going to increase their stats and make them better immensely. You put a little green experience cube, the little translucent cube on them, and every time you kill an enemy, you can move that cube 1. Now, what players are going to do is there's going to be 9 rounds of the game. And in the 9th round, players are going to fight these 2 boss cards here. We have the Toby, who's just a mean-looking guy who apparently does not have a face that's proper. And then we have this gentleman here. Now, this guy here is pretty critical because each enemy that you fight, you're going to need to roll dice that are equal to or higher than their defense. So I'm going to be, when you're attacking an enemy, you're going to roll a certain number of dice, usually according to your attack ability, and the number of hits that you roll, so here's 4 hits, would need to be equal or higher than the character's defense. If so, you do 1 hit to them, and you'll need to do 5 hits to Toby to take him out. But this guy here, basically, his defense is the number of victory tokens showing Akatsuki. Now, what does this matter, okay? What this matters is at the end of each round, you're either going to beat 2 enemies, if you're playing a 4 to 5 player game, or 1 enemy in a 2 to 3 player game. If you defeat them, you'll put one of your victory tokens here. Otherwise, you put one of the enemy tokens there. So if you don't bother to defeat them at all over the course of the game, you're not going to be able to beat that final boss when you get to the end. Because if he has a defense of 8, unless you are pulling off some amazingly spectacular moves, there's no way you're going to take that guy out. It's really impossible, because he would have a 7 defense. This guy's already hard enough with a 5 defense. You want this guy to be as easy to beat as possible. So on each round of the game, you're going to have 3 rounds where players are going to take actions. And players have 2 actions, and you can take the same action twice. Players can move 2 up to 1 or 2 spaces on the board, and you follow the yellow lines. If you go to a spot where there's a trap token, and you notice the trap tokens are blue, you can play a harder game by adding red trap tokens instead. And you'll turn over a trap token, and a trap token is going to do one of 2 things. Either it's going to be an explosive rune, boom, does a damage to you, yay. Or it's an enemy, and you'll stop and fight that enemy. All these enemies have 1 hit point, and they're either going to be 2, 3, or 4 defense to take them out. When you attack an enemy, that is also an action. Like I said, you're going to roll dice. Now, there's 2 symbols on the dice. There are the attack symbols, and then there are the strategy symbols. Each player has their own specific strategy card deck. they're going to be drawing 3 cards from that deck, and at the end of every round, they have a chance to discard and draw more. To play these cards, there's a cost at the top, and that card is going to be in chakra. They're going to be paying that cost in cubes, and you also will be getting 1 chakra cube every round. And another action you can take is you can meditate, and you can take one of those chakra cubes, and if you're in the home spot, you can also heal 1 wound when you meditate. But you can play one of these cards. Now, many of the cards, when you play them, will give you an extra die at the bottom. So this one here, Inner Sakura, you pay 2, you get an extra die. But they also have a special ability. This one here, one of your blank dice is replaced with a hit. For each special symbol that you roll, you can activate whatever it says on the card. So for example here, this one gives me 2 extra dice, and I can re-roll any die of my choosing for each of those special symbols that I roll. Sometimes you have cards that simply just do a special ability. Here I can dodge an injury. If someone's about to attack me, I can play this. They're not all played during the attack phase, and each person's deck is different, although there are the same type of cards in each person's deck. But here, it inflicts 1 injury on the target. So this is great. This Hidden Lotus, it gives you +2, and there's a chance to do more than 1 damage on the enemy character. Here you can immobilize the target, which means they can't hit you back. And the decks, like I said, some of the cards repeat throughout the decks, but they also have their own special cards. So you can move, meditate, or attack. And when you stop on a trap, you stop. When you get to wherever this character is, the evil bad guy with no face, that's actually not him. That's actually 2 cards that are randomly drawn from a deck. Again, it's only 1 card if you're playing a 2 or 3 player game. And then you fight these guys. Some of these guys have special abilities, like when this guy will summon a creature. So there's creature tokens that go with this person. This guy, when he comes into play, eliminate it. Akatsuki members are shuffled back into the deck. So if you beat any of these, they come back into the deck. If you don't beat these by the time 3 turns are over, then you put that symbol on the track and you go to the next round. If you do beat them, you put it on the victory point side. Now, once the round is over, whether you've beaten these guys or not, this guy who starts at number 1 teleports over to number 2, and you got to go over there to beat him in the second round. Then he goes to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then on the 9th round comes here, and then you're fighting the 2 main bad guys. If you beat these guys, you win the game. If you don't beat them, you lose. And that's how you play. There's special abilities. There's different keywords. If a player is knocked out, they're basically out of the game, although each player has cards that can bring someone back into the game. So each person has some type of healing card. Paralysis is the thing. So here, for example, you can restore 1 health point and remove 1 paralysis from a hero in the zone. That's escape jujitsu. So each player has those, and one of the characters especially is a healing character. And you also lose all your experience points when that happens too. And even one of the little creatures on the board, if they hit you 1 time, they can paralyze you. So you have to be very cautious not to let that happen. Here's the problem. This game is okay. I did not hate playing it, but Naruto has several major problems. One of those problems is luck. Now, I don't mind luck in games. I don't mind rolling dice and stuff, but in this game, just sometimes you just don't roll well, and there's nothing you can do really to stop it. You can play cards to give you extra dice, and nothing might work. And the dice, what do they got on them? They got 2 1-hits, a double hit, a single hit, and a special ability, and a special ability. Just sometimes it just doesn't work out that well. So that's a problem, but it's not a major problem with the game. A bigger problem I have with the game is the whole being paralyzed thing. Ooh, you took too many wounds, you're paralyzed. You're out of the game. Now, you're not out of the game, right? You can't take any actions. You just got to basically have someone else heal you. Well, that's just kind of a pain in the neck. It's this whole, someone's got paralyzed, we got to go heal them, and there's a good chance you're in major trouble when that happens. And it's not fun for the character being paralyzed, and especially since you lose all your experience. That was kind of like a what? When you get paralyzed, you lose your experience? It doesn't even make sense thematically. You think you would learn more from being paralyzed. But my 2 biggest problems with the game is, 1, the game is very samey. It's just the character always goes to 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, then 7. So you're going to figure out different strategies to stop the different characters, and you got to say, hey, I got to get to these different areas. Okay, we go over here to 1. All right, we're going to skip 2 because there's no way we can get to 2 in time, so we're going to go to 3 and prepare there. And And it just feels like this work. It's like, run over this side of the board, fight, fight, fight. No, run over to the other side of the board, and fight, fight, fight. And so you got to say, okay, well, we'll split the party. You go to 2, get to 3. Well, splitting the party does not work very well because these guys are really powerful. And so you got to really kind of use multiple people. And that brings me to another point with this game is that it doesn't really work doesn't kind of stretch really well for the different number of players. It doesn't scale. I mean, there's 1 enemy for 2 or 3, and there are 2 enemies for 4 and 5. Well, you know what? That means 5 is easier than 4, and 3 is easier than 2. Why? 4 is really hard. You have 2 enemies that you need to fight with 4 characters. To take out 2 enemies usually takes 3 of the characters to do. So what's the other character can do? You can say, well, he can go around and blow up traps and clear them out. And that's true. And that is a possibility. But again, like I said, it comes back to the game almost feeling scripted and each game feeling the same. Yes, the enemies that you fight are different, although they don't feel that different. But the path that you go to the different enemies is going to be the same over and over and over again. And, with 2 characters, fighting 1 is okay, but it's way better than 3. And I was kind of surprised that they didn't kind of scale that well. So these are a lot of negatives about the game. Now, like I said, the fan of the TV series was like, woo, this is kind of fun, even as we were getting pile drived. And there's also some characters that you really should take. Like the healer character, you better take them, because it just is odd to me that a minor character, like a minor minion, can just knock your character out. Aren't you supposed to be these great characters? They sometimes, they're not as powerful as the bigger characters, but they did more damage. It was just very confusing. The rules were written okay. They looked nice. There's a full play example, which I had to read through to figure out exactly how the game worked. And then even winning or losing each round, what does it matter? And then you're like, oh, you get to the final boss. Oh, that's why it matters. But the game rules don't even seem to indicate that's that big of a deal. It's kind of an odd thing. I'm sure that you would like the game better if you can get into the theme, but I don't think that the theme is being dealt justice here. Again, it's kind of a linear story, and you're running to these different locations, which I'm sure means something to the people who see them. But there's just too much of this. We run a location, we fight, we lost. Why did we lose? We rolled badly. We ran into this fight, we won. Why did we win? We rolled well. And the idea of using the chakra for the cards and stuff, that's a good one. And I like the fact that each player has a different deck. That comes together well. But the whole game just, you play it once, you're like, okay, now we know what to do for the second game. Great. Now for the third game, wait a minute. Are we doing the same stuff we did in the second game? Yeah, because the locations doesn't change. So we know that we're going to skip location. What location did we skip? 3, because we're going to run over to 4 and fight the enemies 2 times in a row at 4 and 5. So, I don't know. It just wasn't that interesting and exciting. The components are fine. There's miniatures and the little trap tokens and the cubes and all that's fine. And I think if you like the game, you will like it more than I did. Like the video series, you'll like it more than I did. But I'm looking for a really cool game, and it's just not here. Dice Tower Judgment, too samey really. Just an okay game.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door!